Hello everybody and welcome to our inaugural Euro 2012 Goalcast. 16 nations are massed in Poland and Ukraine, ready for the off. Plenty of optimism out there. Spain and Germany, of course, have their superstar squads. Italy have their morale-boosting match-fixing scandal. England have the knowledge, of course, that after a build-up as bad as this one's been, things can only really get better. But what really can we expect in the group stage as well? Ahead of the opening matches, we've assembled a cross-continental chit-chat to try and work out where the surprises are going to come. We've got some of the finest minds in European football. Let's introduce them to you. Jimmy-Floyd Hasselbaink, the former Netherlands international. Hello, Jimmy. From Warsaw, we have Gabriele Marcotti and Raphael, Honigstein, noted European journalists. And also joining us from Goal.com, we have Wayne Veysey. Now, Jimmy, let's start with you, a man with, of course, international experience at a major tournament like this. A difficult group for Holland, but so many reasons for optimism. World Cup finalists and a brilliant qualifying campaign. How do you feel about their chances?
If they can pass the group, then their chances are going to be really good. They have got a really difficult group with Denmark, Portugal, and our biggest rivals, Germany. You know, their first match against Denmark has to be a win in my eyes, because if you're going to go into the next games without any points, it's going to be very difficult and very hard. But the squad looks very well going forward, so I think Holland should be okay.
Okay, the big question: Van Persie or Huntelaar? What do you think, Jimmy?
Well, for me, what Van Persie has done this year, Van Persie should play as a long striker. I'm a big favorite of Huntelaar. I think Huntelaar is a really good striker, but Van Persie has done so magnificent this year. I just think that he is in a zone at the moment that nobody can really touch him. So I would think that you would have to give him the first choice at this moment of time.
All right. You mentioned lots of good options going forward for the Netherlands. What about at the back, though?
Well, that is Holland's problem. That's Holland's biggest problem. In my eyes, that's the weakest point of the team. The two centre halves are not very quick, are not very good one against one. Yes, they are very good on the ball, but defensively they struggle at times and they make certain mistakes. That's why you would have to play with Van Bommel and De Jong in front of them, just to give them enough protection. Holland is also struggling with a natural left back, and it looks like Schaar, who is a midfielder, would play there and would help the squad out like that. Van der Wiel, yeah, magnificent young right back going forward, but also one against one, he is not the best. It's not his strongest point. You know, he defends going forward, and that's his strength. So the back four is going to be a problem if you don't have Van Bommel and De Jong in front of them.
Right, but you do. You've also got a very tough group, and your biggest rivals, as you say, Germany, who everybody's raving about, certainly in England, as potential winners. Raphael, what are they saying in Germany, though?
Well, there's a slight apprehension because the last couple of games weren't that convincing, because you have injury worries right through the spine of the team. Mertesacker, Schweinsteiger and Klose, who should all start if Löw gets his way, are all struggling a little bit still with ill effects, and there are some unconfirmed reports even that Mertesacker picked up another injury in training on Thursday morning. So there are some worries. There is also, I think, that question whether the potential that they undoubtedly have can actually be being brought to bear, because, you know, in 2008 there was a similar anticipation that this would be Germany's Euros, and that they were seen as big favourites, bigger than Spain even at the time, certainly from a German perspective, but for some reason or another Germany didn't quite deliver then. So people are hoping that history don't repeat itself, and of course they know that this group doesn't afford the team any time to slip up.
When you look at the team that Germany took to Euro 2008 and indeed the World Cup when you were very strong again, is there an extra ingredient this time around that makes you think they'll go all the way?
There is, yes. I mean, in terms of the depth, they are better than 2 years ago. They have more quality players available. They have more options up front. It's a big tussle between Klose and Gomez because both had very good seasons. There are lots of good cases to be made for the likes of Royce and Götze to be included, but they'll be on the bench coming on later on. So there is quality, certainly in the more attacking and in midfield parts. At the back, they still have that age-old problem that wherever Philipp Lahm plays, whether it's on the left or on the right, there isn't a second Philipp Lahm that you could use to strengthen the back four. And they've never solved this. It's been a problem since 2006, and they hope that they won't get punished for that. But you'll essentially see more or less the same team as in 2010, but with a lot better backup options. Okay. So if things don't go quite according to plan, or if somebody like Müller is suspended, as he was against Spain in the semi-final, you now have players to bring on.
You say all that, but Jens Lehmann's saying today that Germany will do well to get out of the group.
Yeah, I mean, it is an easy group, of course, and you've got Portugal going to be very, very difficult to play. I think they're probably the best counter-attacking side if you put the Dutch aside for a moment, and they will do the kind of stuff that will frustrate Germany. They'll be very, very solid in midfield, where they're not very exciting but competent, and then try to hit the people up front, and that's the fear for Germany, and they know that they can't afford to slip up. A draw might not be good enough in this game, and it's going to be tough. But if they do go out, and if they come anywhere near fulfilling the potential, I think they have enough to win this tournament.
Wow, all right. Portugal, Gabriele, they got arguably the best player in the world right now, so can we rule them out of making the knockout stages?
No, I don't think you can rule them out at all, actually. I think I actually have Portugal advancing to the quarterfinals.
At whose expense?
Well, hopefully at both Holland and Germany's. More realistically, I think just Holland. The way I see it is this: is that I think this is a team under Paulo Bento. They've had a lot of ups and downs. He stood his ground in qualifying. Sending home Ricardo Carvalho and Jose Bosingwa. So he's shown that there's a bit of a toughness there. I think defensively they're very good. Certainly Bruno Alves and Pep and Rolando should get in there. But most of all, I often look for players who maybe are very talented, but maybe had quiet seasons for whatever reason. And I think to a guy like Nani at Manchester United, where he didn't play that much this year, certainly not as much as he did last year, I think he could be a big factor going forward. As Raph said, they're a very good counter-attacking side, and if the focus of the other teams is going to be entirely on Cristiano, they have somebody who, when he's on song, he can certainly hurt you.
Wayne, meantime, a lot of people will look at the squad and go, but Helder Postiga's still in it.
Yeah, and of course we remember Helder Postiga from Tottenham, and he fired blanks constantly, although he did score a very good penalty against England, of course, didn't he, in 2006. I think from neutral perspective, in this group, everyone sees Germany as the strong favourites to go through, and then it's possibly Holland or Portugal. That first game for Holland against Denmark could be trickier than some people might imagine. Denmark are very solid in defence. Kjær and Agger, high quality centre back pair, played to a strong level this season. But then the question marks for Denmark is obviously scoring goals. They've got Flair and Eriksson, but Nicholas Bender, he thinks he's great, but the rest of us aren't so sure.
Although he does have a good record with the Danish national side. The Danes, poor chaps, in that really difficult group. I bet they're wishing they'd been drawn in Group A, where they would have had rivals like Poland and Russia and the Czechs and Greece, of course. The Poles, how much attention should we be paying to them? I'm wondering what the mood is like in Warsaw, Raphael.
Well, I think the Poles have a good 11. They don't have a lot of depth. They also have an easy group, but also pressure that comes with that easy draw, because before the tournament, they were happy to be there, and the expectation wasn't quite high. Now the expectations are high that they should make it out of this group, and some people I talked to said, we can't deal with this, we're not used to that kind of pressure. So others said, the team is ready and we believe that this might be our year. The problem is, of course, even if they make it out of this group, who will then they come up against in the quarters? So you can't really see an extended run, whatever happens for them. I think the best they can hope for is to prolong the interest of a host nation into the quarters, into the second week or the third week of the tournament. But I don't think that the three Dortmund guys aside, Piszczek, Błaszczykowski and Lewandowski, who are of course very good, that there is quite enough to trouble the likes of Germany, Holland or Portugal or whoever they'll meet in the possible quarters.
They've got the home support, of course, possibly a few favours along the way from the referees, as is generally the case with the home nations. But Russia, perhaps, Gabriele, would they seem the better bet from this group, particularly after what they did the other day to Italy?
Yeah, Russia, I think, are the favourites. I wouldn't, the performance against Italy, first 45 minutes, Russia were battered. They didn't concede, which is obviously important. They took advantage of the opportunities at the other end. I think Dick Advocat has a really good pulse of this Russian team there, and I think obviously Jagoev is a guy that you sort of expect this to be his coming out tournament. But you also have still some of the same old issues. I think at the back, even though there's only one Berezutski this time around, I think you still have some issues of perhaps of sluggishness and whatnot. I personally have Russia finishing second in the group behind Poland, although I agree, that they probably are better equipped going forward to go further than the Poles.
All right, interesting. Meantime, Group D, is it, that England are in? We're talking about Russia as potential dark horses. A lot of people getting very excited about France. And Jimmy, I know you're one of them.
Yeah, I think France, how they are playing at this moment of time, they look very free. They look very, like a lot of weight has come off their shoulders. They going forward. They just look really. It looks very easy for them at this moment of time, and that's what's make them very dangerous. When they won the World Cup and the European Cup, they were also so free, and then after they dropped significantly, and at this moment of time, that freeness is back that they had when they were really successful. Ribery is playing really well. Malouda, surprisingly, is playing really well, and they have got some other youngsters in the midfield that are just, again, very free. They are going to be a force, I think.
When you look at that team from '98 and then 2000, those back-to-back titles, and you look at this one, how do you think the current squad matches up to them?
I think like for like, this one is not as good, but they do try to play that kind of football. They have the two wingers. They have one striker, Benzema, who can score goals and who is very mobile. And their bench is very strong as well. And I think when you go into a tournament, that is the most important thing, your bench. And that is very, very strong for France at the moment.
Okay, now also in France's group, of course, England. You're a former teammate of John Terry's, who's been at the heart, or certainly been connected with the latest controversy to dog the England team as they head towards their opener with France. How much do you think, having been in a tournament, having lived through that kind of atmosphere yourself, Jimmy, how much do you think that's going to be having an effect on England's preparations?
I think it will have an effect, because it just does. Every negative publicity does have a kind of effect on a squad. I know John Terry personally. He's a leader. He wants to win. I don't think that it will affect him that much. I think it will affect the other players more. And that's the problem, But, England has had so many problems you know, in this little spell. So many injuries, so many players not going because of injuries, you know, so the expectation is not there at the moment, and that might be a very good thing for England and for the players.
It might, or the expectations may be low for a reason. Jimmy, yes or no, will they get out of the group?
I would think so, yes. I think England would get second.
All right. Jimmy, listen, I know you've got to dash off, so many thanks for joining us on this inaugural Goalcast for Euro 2012. But let me put that question to Gabriele, Raphael and Wayne as well. How do you see England's chances? Is everyone being too downbeat about this group of players?
No, I think that there's a problem here because Hodgson, even before the injury started to paint a picture of England being underdogs and being up against it. And you had the quotes from Gareth Southgate saying, you know, we don't have the team to outplay many teams. So they're already managing expectations. I think they're preparing the public for a very defensive lineup. I think and also they're preparing their own team that they're going to have to enjoy, or as it is, not enjoy large spells where the opposition will dominate the game to them. And you could say that's a healthy attitude because it's realistic for a change, or you could say this is a self-fulfilling prophecy and the players themselves start believing that they're not actually in with a chance. I mean, Hodgson said that he wasn't sure that France are beatable. I mean, that's an extraordinary statement to hear before a Euro game from a nation that is still ranked 6th in the world, and they're sort of, you know, portraying themselves as footballing winners. So I don't know. I mean, the problem with this kind of 1-0 football setup is that it works as long as you don't concede. As soon as you concede, what do you do? And I think that will be the problem for England. If they concede against France, I see them losing. Then they're against Sweden, they'll be under huge pressure. And then the last game against the hosts in Kiev, in Donetsk. So I think, from what I've seen over the last few days, I think I'm a little bit more pessimistic about England's chances as I were before, and I think they might not make it out the group.
Wayne, it's been called the least inspiring England squad for decades, and that was before the recent rash of injuries and controversies.
Yeah, I mean, it's a very pedestrian-looking squad, James. I mean, especially without Rooney for the first 2 games, there's no real fantasy to the team. I mean, Ashley Young will be the playmaker behind the main striker for the first 2 games, almost certainly. And he was England's best player in the World Cup qualifying campaign. In the Euro qualifying campaign. But you know, isn't a regular starter at Manchester United. I think for England's problem is, you know, they're going to be very cautious. They're going to play very safe. And, you know, the problem is scoring goals, especially without Rooney for those first 2 matches. And we saw against Belgium last Saturday, Belgium completely outplayed England. I mean, England they scored the goal and then they shut up shop, didn't they? And that's, I think, as Raphael said, that's how they're going to play. They're going to be very, very, very tight. The problem for me looking at is, you know, that front 4, if you've got Welbeck there who's got very little experience, and then on the flanks, 2 of Downing, Walcott and Milner, that's not going to scare anyone really, is it?
Doesn't sound too impressive, you're right. Now what about Group C then, just to finish off, where Spain of course lurk, and also the enigma that is the Italians. A lot of interest there about how events back home will affect them. Of course they've got injury concerns of their own. The Spanish meantime, Gabriele, can you come up with a reason why people aren't stronger about Spain? Is it the absence of Puyol and Villa, and if so, is that right?
Yeah, I was wondering the same thing myself. I mean, I have Spain winning the tournament in the end. I don't like picking favorites, but to me, they're just so much better than anybody else. And you can go and sort of modulate it in terms of it's a short tournament, and so anything can happen, and you need to be lucky and, as well as good and all that jazz. But, you know, I view it as like, okay, so there's no Carlos Puyol, who, you know, was 33, 34 anyway, but they can either play Sergio Ramos in the middle and Arbeloa at right back, which seems pretty good to me, or play Javi Martinez at centre back. Piqué had a bad season, but it doesn't mean that he's going to have a bad Euros. And again, I think most teams at the Euros would happily swap whoever plays centre half for them for Gerard Piqué if they could. Up front, you know, there's no David Villa, but you've got Negredo who can do a Villa impersonation. You've got Llorente who gives you something different. You've got Torres who gives you something different. You've got the option of the false 9 with playing Sask or David Silva as your centre forward. So it just seems to me they have so many solutions, and man for man, they're better than anybody else. And also they're used to winning. I think there's a culture of winning there that a lot of other countries don't have, which Spain didn't have for a long time. So for me, they're the cast iron favorites.